just before this interview, I had a client who called late, and she called and she was apologetic. She immediately said, I'm sorry I'm late. I hope I haven't upset you. So she's already decided that she's right, that she was wrong to call in late. And she's not actually really available to really be with me because she's over there just shaming herself, basically, for being late. And so in that moment, being right cost her being able instead to be present, to even just find out, how am I? If she were just present, she would know I wasn't upset. She calls when she calls. In this case, I mean, maybe sometimes I might be angry, and that anger is intelligent. We could say, welcome anger, and what do we get to learn from the anger? So there would be no controlling the situation, and then she'd get to just learn something about the cost of coming on when she came on. So being right keeps us from being available to learn. Being right keeps us from seeing possibilities that we could never have seen before. Being right keeps us in a smaller version of ourselves, because a lot of us hold stories like, I'm right that I'm not a very good speaker, I'm right that I am good at these things and not good at these things. And so we really limit ourselves a lot by our stories that we tell each other about what we're right about. So what I love about letting go of being right is there's just so much more possibility about who we get to be, what our relationships get to be, what our creations get to be. And then obviously there's all these other things about, if I'm right, I usually have to hold on to my breath again. I'm constricted. It's causing disease. Depression is a big cost to being right for a lot of people. If I'm right that my dad, and I used to hold this story, I'm right that my dad should get me more. And I used to really believe that. So I'd have this disconnection from my dad that was not necessary at all. And when I really looked at that and said, is that really true that my dad doesn't get me? And when I questioned that, I started to see, oh my gosh, that's not true at all. My dad gets me in all kinds of ways. When we're right, we tend to go only look for the evidence to validate our righteousness and ignore all the other content that shows us that there's something else going on. So even the way we perceive what's happening around us can radically change when we let go of being right. So what had been some tension for myself in my relationship with my father for 20 years shifted in a matter of 10 minutes by me just questioning one righteous belief that my father doesn't get me. And just shifting that around and looking at how the opposite could at least be as true, which is one of our commitments, I started to see all kinds of things about my father getting me, and about how sometimes I don't get me, and sometimes I don't get my father. And I could start to see, wait a minute, there's a lot more going on here than I had seen before. And all of a sudden, I've got this close connection to my father that I hadn't had in a long time, all because of holding on to being right. What we mean by responsibility is different than how we think a lot of people look at it. It's more like accountability. We're not talking about being accountable. What we're talking about is to be responsible means to recognize that I am in a co-creative process with other people co-creating something. So if we create some results, if I'm responsible, really 100% responsible, and I've got some results here that I said I didn't want, but yet here they are. From a place of 100% responsibility, I'm still going to ask, how did I co-create that? So one of the things I do with teams is I say, what's a result that you're all having right now that you say that you didn't want? And they'll give me an example. And let's say it will be, we're not selling our product as quickly as we thought we would. We didn't want that, but yet here it is. I said, okay, great. Let's assume that there's another team right behind you. They're going to create their product that's very similar to yours, and they want to have the same experience you have of not having that product sell as quickly as they wanted to. If you could have a recipe that you would have them follow that is exactly the recipe you've been following to create your results, what would you tell them that recipe is? And so I would have them start to write it down, and they start to immediately go, put the product out faster than it was really ready to go on so that it had some glitches and lost some product share early on. Have some infighting between development and sales that created some slower communication. They could start to go, these are the things that we've all done that have co-created this experience. So everybody takes responsibility. So another way you could look at responsibility is when the spill happened in the Gulf with the oil. One of the things, if we wanted to, is we could all say, how am I responsible for co-creating that spill? Now, a lot of people would say, I wasn't there and I'm not a part of that company and that has nothing to do with me. But if you look again, you'll say, I have something to do with the fact that my lifestyle may continue to support drilling for oil. I may not be going and pushing back with our political folks on legislating new kinds of renewable energy. Perhaps I'm speeding and recognizing that I'm asking for more gas in each moment. And so if I look, I can say I have something to do with co-creating that. Also, they supposedly knew there was an issue and they didn't handle it. So I might go, where are there things that I know are issues in my life that I'm not handling? So if I want them to handle things, I can first come over here and say, I have some responsibility in handling my stuff first before I ask anybody else to handle it. So radical responsibility is taking a look at how am I co-creating everything around me, and that I always have something to learn, that I'm never just at the effect of, and life is just happening to me. So it's a radical shift for most people. It's not the way most people live their lives. So 100% responsibility means 100%. No more, no less. So for example, in this room right now, there are 4 of us who are co-creating an experience, who will co-create this content, and maybe some other people will be involved as well in the editing process and the promotion of it. We'll all co-create an experience here. None of us is any more or less responsible. The interviewer is no more responsible for this going well than the one who's being interviewed, or the people who are witnessing could also speak up if they don't think this is going well. They could say, hey, I think something could change here. We're all co-creating an experience. And when we recognize that everybody's equally responsible, it changes the way we show up and interact with one another. So I work a lot with CEOs and presidents who get really burnt out because they're taking way more than their 100% responsibility. Let's say there's 40 people in a company. We would say there's 4,000 points, 4,000 100%, 40 100%, 4,000% co-creating an experience. Everybody's just 100%. What happens is a lot of people at the top start grabbing on to other people's responsibility and feeling uber responsible for getting the results. And what happens is that creates burnout and it creates victims below you. So we say, what is it like to lead where you only stay at just 100, not a drop below, not any extra, just at 100. It's a practice to really learn what that's like to feel just 100% and ask others to do the same. One of the commitments that we have is the commitment to play and rest. And I want to talk about both of those, especially in Silicon Valley, especially with startups. I want to talk about that play doesn't mean just a childhood play, haha. It doesn't mean throwing a foosball table in a room and calling that play. Play is a state of mind. And play is this kind of, it's a lighthearted place of I'm curious, I'm open. Play can be telling a great story. Play can be doing art. We actually highlight in our book, there's a great book by Stuart Brown on play. I think it's important for people to know their play styles. And in our book, we talk about the different play styles that are available. But play trumps drama. Play is more entertaining than drama. So for example, on television, these high drama, real-time programs, they get a lot of attention. But so does a great improv show, right? Like, whose line is it anyway? It can compete because the improv is a form of play, and that might be able to hold ratings with some high drama reality show. But outside of good, healthy play, we're going to default back to the intensity of drama. And I can see that a lot of startups get really caught up in the drama of, it's so serious, we've got to get this up, and the whole investment, and it can get heavy. So I want to highlight play as an important quality that I encourage all companies, and especially startups, to embrace right from the front end. And then the other one is around rest, because I am very concerned about workaholism and how intense it is getting out there, and especially in the Valley, where people work long hours, they don't stop, they barely spend time with their kids before they're back online looking at all the hundreds of emails they're trying to get through, staying up late hours and back up in the morning, and people are having to take pills to put themselves to sleep or drink their alcohol, and then they got to caffeinate back up in the morning, and it's looking like a really unsustainable practice. So rest is so key. We call it sprint and recover. And I want to encourage everyone to start looking for, how can I rest more? And how can I recognize that resting more will actually make me more productive? So when NASA was looking at how do we get the most out of our astronauts, we only have this many days up there and we have all the stuff we want them to do, they started to recognize that if we let them rest, we'll actually get more production out of them. So I think the research they got was that companies who allow their employees to rest 45 minutes a day will be 35% more productive than their counterparts. I mean, that's a lot for 45 minutes of rest. So do you guys have sleeping rooms? Do you have places where people can go nap comfortably and be quiet? Are there places where even just for 5 or 10 minutes you can turn off all apps and devices, maybe just close your eyes and be quiet for a few minutes, just maybe listen to a favorite song? Can you go take a walk around the building for 10, 15 minutes and just relax? I want to highly push this particular commitment for your clients of how do we bring play and rest and rhythm in so that we can be more sustainable. And when you're neck and neck with another company where you both have great talent, you have a similar product, who's going to push forward, in my opinion, are going to be those who are going to play and rest, who learn how to manage their energy that way. Is going to make, I think, going to be a significant difference.